For months, Martell Holt stayed quiet. The cameras stopped rolling, the interviews slowed down, and the man who once filled every screen with his charm seemed to disappear into silence. It wasn't the peaceful kind of silence, it was the kind that felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. People noticed. Fans whispered that something serious was happening behind the scenes. Every photo, every public sighting turned into a headline. Blogs guessed, social media judged, and even his supporters started wondering if Martell had finally lost the fight he had been holding on to for so long. Then, out of nowhere, the silence broke. The long, drawn-out court battle that had stretched across months finally came to an end. The judge's ruling was delivered, and for Martell Holt, it was the moment that changed everything. After weeks of back-and-forths, accusations, and emotional tension, the decision came, and it wasn't in his favor. The words hit like a wave across social media: Martell Holt loses custody battle. Melody Shari wins full custody. Inside that courtroom, everything that had been hidden under the surface was finally laid bare. What had once been a love story turned into a public war. The same two people who once stood together as partners in business and in life were now seated on opposite sides of a courtroom, strangers divided by years of hurt, betrayal, and unhealed wounds. Before all this, Martell and Melody were the image of success. Together, they were the face of love and marriage, Huntsville, a couple that inspired others with their drive and family life. They built businesses, homes, and a picture-perfect life that looked unshakable from the outside. To fans, they were proof that love could survive the spotlight. But behind the perfect photos and red carpet smiles, cracks had started forming. Whispers of infidelity turned into headlines, and soon, the truth came out: Martell's affair wasn't gossip. It was real, and it shattered everything they had built together. Melody walked away from the marriage, but she didn't walk away quietly. She chose peace over chaos, stability over public image, and protection for her kids over fame. Martell, however, wasn't ready to let go. The split turned bitter, and what should have been private pain became entertainment for millions. Every episode, every social media post became another piece of evidence in the public court of opinion. The real courtroom, though, was where the story reached its breaking point. Custody of their children became the center of everything. For Martell, this wasn't just a legal case, it was about proving he wasn't the villain people thought he was. He wanted the world to see him as a devoted father who deserved equal time. For Melody, it was about maintaining the calm she had fought so hard to rebuild, making sure her children grew up in stability, not tension. As the hearings dragged on, both sides endured emotional breakdowns and tough cross-examinations. What should have been about parenting turned into an open wound that kept bleeding every time the judge's gavel hit the desk. But after months of back and forth, the moment of truth finally came. The judge shuffled his papers slowly before speaking. The courtroom was tense, every breath, every movement felt amplified in that silence. Martell sat straight, trying to hold his composure. Melody stayed calm, hands folded, eyes focused on the judge but expression steady. Then came the words that changed everything. The judge declared that the children would remain under the primary custody of their mother, Melody Shari, while Martell would be given structured visitation under specific conditions. The courtroom froze. The sound of that ruling echoed louder than any argument they had made over the months. Martell didn't react at first. He sat still, his eyes locked ahead, his face a mask hiding the storm inside. The man known for his confidence and control seemed completely still, as if trying to process the weight of what he had just lost. Behind him, his attorney lowered his head. On the other side, Melody took a slow, deep breath, relief more than victory. There were no cheers, no smiles, only quiet understanding that something huge had ended. That day wasn't just about who won custody. It was about the end of a long, painful chapter. For Martell, it meant loss, not only time with his children but also a piece of the image he had spent years building. For Melody, it meant closure. The kind that comes when you've finally survived the worst. When the hearing ended, Martell walked out of the courtroom without a word. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but he stayed silent, head down, hands in his pockets. To the public, he looked defeated. To his supporters, he looked restrained. But inside, the silence was heavy, almost unbearable. Days passed with no comment. Then, late one night, Martell broke his silence, not through an interview, not on television, but through a long, emotional post online. The message wasn't smooth or media-ready. It sounded like a man who had run out of ways to hide the pain. People love to tell half the story, he wrote. They see the cameras, they see the edits, but they don't see the father who wakes up every day fighting for his kids. I'm not perfect, but I love my children more than anything in this world. And that's something no court can take away from me. The post spread like wildfire. Screenshots appeared on blogs and gossip pages. Some people praised him, saying it was his most real and vulnerable moment yet. Others accused him of playing the victim. But whatever people thought, one thing was clear: Martell was finally speaking from a place of truth and pain. Then came another message: sometimes truth doesn't win in court, but it always comes to light. It was short, cryptic, and full of emotion. Friends close to him said the ruling had crushed him more than anyone realized. One insider revealed that Martell felt like he had lost his identity, the image of the strong, confident family man who once had it all. He didn't just lose a legal case, he lost a piece of himself. For years, Martell had been defined by control over his business, his image, his relationships. Now, stripped of that control, he was forced to face himself, not as a celebrity, but as a man whose mistakes had finally caught up to him. In interviews that followed, his voice carried exhaustion. He spoke about how the system was unfair, how fathers were often dismissed, and how he planned to appeal. But underneath the words, there was pain. The confident Martell of old was gone, replaced by someone wrestling with what it meant to lose not only custody but dignity in the public eye. While Martell was breaking his silence, Melody stayed still. She didn't respond with long captions or interviews. She simply posted one picture, a soft photo of her children playing in the yard at sunset. No hashtags, no words. Just peace. And somehow, that silence spoke louder than any statement. Her followers flooded the comments, calling it grace. One person wrote, "This is what peace after the storm looks like." Another said, "No need to gloat when God already handled it." The post went viral, not because of drama, but because of how quietly powerful it was. That contrast between Martell's pain and Melody's peace became the story. His words were full of frustration and heartbreak. Her silence was full of strength and healing. To many, that difference said everything about how far both had come, and how far apart they now stood. But behind closed doors, things were more complicated. Those who knew Martell said he was struggling deeply. He wasn't angry at just the court, he was angry at himself. He spent nights replaying old arguments, old moments, wondering when everything had changed. He questioned whether pride, fame, or temptation had been the thing that destroyed it all. Friends said he still loved his children deeply, that much was never in doubt. But love wasn't enough to undo years of broken trust. Every day he woke up facing the same reflection of a man trying to rebuild what was already gone. The hardest part wasn't losing the case, it was losing control of the story. The internet had decided who Martell Holt was long before the judge ever spoke. Every headline, every meme turned him into a villain. And no matter what he said, people had already made up their minds. After the ruling, his professional life also took a hit. Brand deals quietly faded, interview requests slowed, and even within the reality TV circle, some began distancing themselves. The same fame that once built his empire now seemed to be tearing it down. The more he spoke, the more people twisted his words. And so, he started retreating again, caught between wanting to explain and knowing it might only make things worse. Meanwhile, Melody focused on her new normal. Her days became about balance, co-parenting schedules, work commitments, and maintaining peace at home. Communication between her and Martell was reduced to the essentials: pickup times, school updates, logistics. No more personal conversations, just structure for the kids. The ruling didn't just change their family, it changed how the world saw them. To some, Martell became a cautionary tale about pride, mistakes, and consequence. To others, he was a man fighting against a system that didn't favor fathers. But for most people, he was simply proof that fame doesn't protect you from real life. It only makes the fall harder to watch. His case also reignited larger conversations online about how fathers are treated in custody battles. Many men saw themselves in Martell's struggle, saying they too had been painted as villains for wanting time with their children. Others disagreed, arguing that Martell's loss wasn't about bias, it was about accountability for his own actions. Somewhere between those arguments lies the truth. Fame turns real pain into public spectacle. What should have been a private journey between two parents became content for millions to consume. Every Instagram post, every court update became part of a show that never stopped airing. But behind the noise, this story is human. Two people once in love, now learning how to coexist after heartbreak. Two parents trying to find peace while the world judges every move. The courtroom decided who gets custody, but it didn't decide who gets to heal. That part is up to them. For Melody, healing looks like peace, quiet mornings, laughter with her kids, and strength that doesn't need validation. For Martell, healing looks harder. It means facing the reflection he's avoided for years and learning what accountability really means. Even after everything, whispers continue. Insiders say Martell may not be done speaking. There are talks of a tell-all interview, perhaps even a project where he shares his side of the story. Whether that brings redemption or more fallout remains to be seen. What's certain is that Martell Holt isn't ready to fade away quietly. The silence that once protected him has now become his biggest enemy, and he knows as the dust settles. One thing is undeniable: this isn't just a story about fame, or even about divorce. It's about consequence, growth, and how quickly the public can turn a love story into a lesson. The judge made his decision, but the real verdict will come in time, when Martell either learns from the pain or repeats the same mistakes. For now, both are rebuilding in their own ways. Melody with grace and calm, Martell with regret and reflection. Their lives may never be the same, but perhaps that's the point. Sometimes the hardest endings are the ones that lead to real change. In the end, this chapter isn't about who won or lost, it's about what's left after the fight is over. The fame, the noise, the judgment all fade, but the lessons stay. Martell's silence has ended, but his journey toward redemption is only beginning.